News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. Don Carpenter Show. Welcome back to the program. 6:32. Chris Brentel is joining us, and it must be a pretty good day for you. TCU did make the top four for the playoff rankings so far. I mean, this is obviously most of these teams have one or two games left. TCU made it in top four. Your top four right now, if the playoff were to happen today, would be Mississippi State, Oregon, Florida State, and TCU. Only one SEC team in there, which is kind of a surprise. It
is a surprise, and I think we talked about this before, but I think they made the right choice. Right now, TCU's resume is better than Alabama's. At this point right now, they played a tougher schedule. They have more big wins. Now, as the season progresses, it might go the other way because Bama has their tougher schedule towards the end of the year. TCU has 3 games against, none of them are ranked. So, I mean, that could change. But right now, they made the right choice putting TCU up there. And I think it does show that the committee doesn't have too much of a bias towards, the SEC. And I think the SEC is the best conference. But, right now, I think they got it right.
Well, and the TCU schedule was front-loaded with the hard teams. Alabama's is back-loaded. That might actually come out as a plus for them at the end if they win out. And this is assuming both teams win out. Alabama might be able to jump back up in there because their final two opponents are Mississippi State and Auburn. So they could conceivably lose both of those games. So Mississippi State, of course, is number 1. Auburn is number 9. So that's 2 top 10 teams in the last 2 weeks.
And the funny part is, if you're Bama, because the leading up to this week, it was, well, where's TCU and Bama going to be? Who's going to be over who? The funny part is, if you're Bama, you have a case more against Oregon than you do. I know Oregon played Michigan State, but other than that, their schedule hasn't been that great. And they did beat Utah. They're ranked, but they also lost to Arizona at home, and Arizona's having a pretty good year. But at the same time, I think you can make the argument that Bama has a better resume than Oregon right now. So really their beef should be with Oregon. I think TCU's resume is better than Oregon's. I also would say that Bama's resume is a little bit better. Now, whether that's enough to where they should be ranked ahead of Oregon, I'm not sure.
Well,
personally, I'm not going to say they messed up the committee because these teams are so close, it's hard to tell. Personally, if it was me, I would have TCU 3, Oregon 4. TCU 3, Bama 4, Oregon 5th.
So you wouldn't even have you would have Florida State at number 2 then.
Yeah, the top 2 I'd keep the same. They're undefeated.
Well,
that's just
Florida State's schedule hasn't been that strong though.
Right.
They certainly have taken the Nebraska, the old school Nebraska method to getting an undefeated record. I don't know if you remember back in the 90s. Especially 94 was the year that Nebraska ran the table. Penn State ran the table. Penn State was obviously a much stronger team. And this is one of the things that led to the BCS championship in the first place. Penn State ran the table, had record-setting offense. Nebraska ended up getting all the votes for number 1, having played a much weaker schedule, but they wanted to give Tom Osborne his championship. And then, of course, the next year, Nebraska runs the table again, and Tom Osborne gets his undisputed championship anyway. So, that's one of the reasons why we're talking about all these playoffs and all this stuff today. They tried the BCS. BCS didn't really work, so now we're in this. But looking at the top 10, other than Ohio State, I think all of those teams are probably capable of winning it all. So this 10-team playoff idea that you came up with might be the best solution.
Well, it might be what it will be here in a few years or so, I'm hoping. But the Florida State thing, to their credit, Florida State, their non-conference, they did schedule Oklahoma State. But when they scheduled them, the Cowboys had won 10. They're kind of having a down year. So that game to now doesn't look good, and you can't really count it as a good win for Florida State this year. But when they scheduled it, that's a premier game.
Well, most of these games are scheduled 2 or 3 years in advance at least.
That was just tough luck for Florida State.
Yeah.
Really.
So But I mean, they've won what 23, 24 in a row, something like that. They haven't ever lost with Crabman under the center.
Man.
So I'm going to start calling him Crab. You ever watch My Name Is Earl where they had Crabman?
I've seen a couple episodes.
Yeah, so that's Jameis Winston's new name, Crabman. So well, he does love the crab legs.
He does.
So
he wants them for free, folks.
Well, yeah.
I mean, why not?
Well,
why not get them for free?
He's starving.
They're
starving.
not paying the kids enough.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not giving them food, and they're not giving them enough, tennis shoes and shirts and hoodies and pants. They just don't get enough at these universities. They don't get a free education. So why not? If it takes a couple crab legs, just look the other way.
Well, he spent all of his autograph money on video games. So, all that. I think and
this point shaving thing's a little crazy. I have to say.
Yeah, I don't know how much he got for the point shaving, but I know he got like $500 for the autographs. I mean, how dumb are you if you're gonna sacrifice your NCAA career? Ask for more than $500.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. Well, $500 that lasts me 2 weeks.
I wouldn't sign autographs for $500, and I'm nobody. If Jameis Winston, he's going to be a big NFL star if he doesn't get arrested beforehand. And what happens? Does he come out and declare for the draft this year? I mean, does he really have any reason to stay at Florida State at this point?
No, he doesn't. There's no reason.
The only thing that I could think of is the Tallahassee police will protect him. I mean, if he gets drafted and ends up going to...
and the Oakland police won't protect him.
No.
I'd say he goes to the Raiders.
Well, he'll be right at home in Oakland. He could just fit right in with the fans. Where does he end up there? Tampa is obviously going to be drafting a quarterback. Who else is going to be drafting a quarterback? A young in the first round this year. I mean,
I'm not sure. I know one thing. I'm not touching the kid. I wouldn't draft him in the 7th round. This guy. If you think, I just think it's insane that people think he can actually go lead a football team.
Well, and he has every physical gift. I mean, he can read defenses. He plays football really well, but everything else is a complete failure.
Yeah, and in the NFL, it's just a different monster. You can lead a bunch of kids that are in college. You get to the NFL, Jameis Winston cannot lead guys that are 20s and even low, 30 years old. It's not going to work.
Yeah, well, you
have to be mature to do something like that.
Can you imagine a 35-year-old offensive lineman, a guard or a center? And these guys have been playing for 15 years. They know what they're doing. They have families at home. They take their job seriously. And then Jameis Winston comes in the locker rooms one day and starts telling you what to do. I can't imagine. But some team will draft him just because of his physical gifts, and we'll end up with another Ryan Leaf.
He's got Oakland written all over. He has Oakland written all over.
If Carr hadn't, he's put together some decent games. I mean,
yes.
Out of all of the rookie quarterbacks, Carr might be the best one, and he's on the worst team. Who knows? I mean, as bad as the Raiders are, I mean, Carr could get injured, and they might need another quarterback. But out of all of them, out of all the rookie quarterbacks, Carr has looked the best. Tampa seems like the obvious landing spot for Jameis Winston, though.
That is a good point. You know what? With their coach, though, I don't think they would take Jameis Winston. I don't think their coach would allow that.
That's the thing. Lovie Smith isn't gonna put up with that kind of stuff.
No.
So.
Which might be good for Jameis if they did take a chance. Lovie Smith might be a good coach, might be a nice influence. Of course, he doesn't listen to Bo Jackson. I don't know about you, but if Bo Jackson's talking, I'm probably going to listen because I think he's one of the greatest athletes, probably the greatest athlete to ever play any sport.
Yeah, well,
ever.
I mean, it's obvious that Jimbo there in Tallahassee isn't gonna do anything. I mean, he just coddles him and protects him. He needs. It's funny. He needs what they did in Dallas with Dez Bryant. Somebody to follow him around all the time until he grows up. And Dez Bryant, I mean, he had some problems. I mean, had some problems back in his first couple years, and now you hear nothing about Dez Bryant.
Yeah.
Except that he broke curfew the other night. But, I mean, he came out and scored 2 touchdowns. So he's not he's not slapping his mother around anymore. So I think he's pretty much cleaned up his act. So what do we have going on in sports this hour?
Well, we have KIML football. After the suspension, we talk about the players that are going to take the spots of the other kids are going to have to step up. They want to win state.
Okay.
Also, we have Major League Baseball. They announced their managers of the year. So
okay, sounds good. We'll see you in an hour. News Talk 1270 KIML.
Twitter isn't just for arguing anymore. Follow Basin Radio Network at Radio Basin. Don Carpenter on News Talk 1270 KIML.